is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Welcome to the MorganMan Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Cole Morgan. Here on the MorganMan Sports Podcast, we talk Atlanta Falcons news, pre-game predictions, and all other news surrounding the Atlanta Falcons.
Touchdown Atlanta!
Also on the podcast, we talk Call of Duty League, esports, covering Roster Mania, major predictions, COD Champs, player trades, and much more to get you ready for every single CDL weekend.
Scum goes through, and Scum snaps, wins the one-on-one in optic with the reverse sweep.
If that sounds good with you, put on your Falcons jersey, grab your gaming headset, and let's get this show started. What is going on, you guys? I'm your host, Stacey Cole Morgan, and you're listening to the MorganMan Sports Podcast here on Spotify, Google Podcasts, GoodPod HQ, or wherever you find your preferred podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about the Atlanta FaZe winning the Major 1 tournament in Riyadh this past weekend. And let me tell you, FaZe has put the rest of the CDL on notice with that pure dominance of what a team should look like in the Call of Duty League has been on full display, especially going up against the Los Angeles Thieves, who are considered the super team going into the season. So we got a lot to talk about in that one right there, ladies and gentlemen. And also, we do got some Atlanta Falcons news to talk about today, and that is Pro Bowler Myles Garrett. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Pro Bowler Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns organization and is looking to get his first Super Bowl in his career. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that and how that relates to the Atlanta Falcons moving forward. So without any further delay, let's go get straight into today's action. All right, you guys. So we are talking about the Atlanta Falcons first to start the podcast off right here. So Falcons have been seen as a prime trade candidate to land four-time All-Pro Bowl pass rusher Myles Garrett. At this point, it's no secret what the Atlanta Falcons' next big acquisition needs to be. It's the same position they've either chosen or to neglect or attempted to patchwork through cheaper means over the last several years, aka a talented pass rusher. In 2024, the Falcons were once again the worst in the NFL at getting to the quarterback. They finished 31st in sacks, 20th in QB pressures, and 25th in pressure percentage, with the quarterback position looking to be shored up thanks to a lofty draft selection of Michael Penix Jr. at the number 8 overall position. At last year's NFL draft, Falcons fans are begging for a fix on that defensive side of the ball. Well, that fix could very well come in the 2025 NFL draft, where Atlanta picks number 15th overall in the first round, or it could come up through a trade for one of the NFL's best pass rushers. On Monday, the Cleveland Browns edge rusher Myles Garrett put his request for a trade in, citing his desire to play in a Super Bowl. And I quote, "While I love calling this city home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent," if I'm pronouncing that right, Garrett said in the post. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It was always to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I've requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Once the announcement of Garrett's request was made public, potential landing spots for former defensive pass rusher of the year began circulating. To no surprise, one of those teams was in need of a pass rusher, and that was the Atlanta Falcons. Without a doubt, Garrett could be a massive upgrade to Atlanta's defensive front, likely making an immediate impact on the Falcons. Could somehow work out a trade with the Browns. The season, Garrett tied for 4th in sacks, 14th, 18th in QB hits, 13th, and 2nd in hurries, 56, and 1st in total pressures, 83. That's why Sports Talk Atlanta suggested the Falcons should exhaust all resources in acquiring the 4-time All-Pro Bowler, The only issue is that multiple reports have stated that the Browns have no intentions of trading the 29-year-old. Recently, the Cleveland Browns have been adamant that they will not trade Garrett and will not take any calls, the Athletic Diana Rossini said. Garrett has 2 years remaining on his 5-year, $125 million deal, which is signed back in 2020. Though the Falcons would need to address the cap situation heading into next season, Garrett's $19.7 million in 2025 and $20.4 million in 2026 are manageable. What he may demand in a new deal afterward could be one of the highest for a defensive player in NFL history. New Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Ulrich would undoubtedly be welcoming a player of Garrett's caliber to his unit for his first season. Right now, however, the Browns and Garrett seem to be at a standstill. Regardless, the Falcons should absolutely make some calls, and I do believe so in this situation. The Atlanta Falcons do have a chance to go after the most sought-after talent there is on that defensive end. No joke. Ever since the Vic Beasley season in 2016, where he had that monster season, making the all-time record for Atlanta Falcons quarterback sacks, and then ultimately fell off. This is something that the Atlanta Falcons desperately need going into the season. So if I'm Terry Fontenot, I am making phone calls at least 20 times a day to make sure that Myles Garrett is going to come my way. Because this is what the city wants. This is what the organization wants. Is someone who could get to the quarterback and ultimately stop the opposing team's offense and get them off the field. So that way Michael Penix Jr., Bijan, and Drake London could cook, essentially. So I'm looking forward to it. Now, again, I am recording this on Monday, February 3rd at 5:44 p.m. Eastern. So if anything does change, I will have an emergency podcast earlier in the week or later in the week before that Friday's episode does go live. But I just don't think anything's going to happen between February 3rd and February 7th or whatever Friday's podcast is. Yeah, the 7th, when you are actually hearing this right now. I just don't think nothing's going to happen between now and then. But things can happen. So we'll wait and see what happens in regards to that. But if the Falcons do land Myles Garrett, I will make an emergency podcast discussing the potential of this trade from the Falcons, from the Browns, and what it means going forward in this offseason. It would actually be Raheem Morris's biggest acquisition for the Atlanta Falcons organization right here. And of course, Terry Fontenot's, because Terry Fontenot has definitely been good at drafting and trading for star-studded players. So we're going to wait and see. We're going to wait and see. But we are moving on over to the Call of Duty League, ladies and gentlemen. Starting things off with none other than Simp winning the Major 1 MVP. Guys, Atlanta FaZe was totally dominant, and Simp was beyond God mode right here. In a thrilling opening tournament of the 2025 season, Atlanta superstar SMG player Chris Simp Lehr earned the tournament MVP honors after taking down the Los Angeles Thieves. Simp was instrumental in FaZe's run at Madrid, leading the squad to victories over the Boston Breach, Toronto Ultra, and LA Thieves twice, and winning their first LAN tournament this season. This marks the third straight tournament FaZe has won, including the esports World Cup last summer and the first online minor tournament at the start of the year. Over the course of the tournament, Simp ended with a 1.07 overall KD, ranking second on the team behind Celium with his 1.11 KD. He led the team in multiple stat categories, including hardpoint kills per 10 minutes, 25.7, hardpoint KD, 1.11, and S&D non-traded kill percentage, 67.9%. While he didn't lead the team, Simp also had a 1.30 KD in search and destroy, while adding 0.82 kills per round, 63% open and duel win percentage, and 13 multi-kill rounds. Simp and Atlanta FaZe will return to action on February 14th versus the Vancouver Surge at the Major 2 qualifiers. So definitely, again, no surprise that Simp was the MVP. Honestly, I was looking at Abeezy being the MVP, but Simp, of course, at the end of the day, he's going to slay and just totally dominate the scene. And that's why he's going to be better than the ones that we grew up with, like the Scumps and the Crimsixes and Claysters. I mean, hell, he's already better than most of them. Because between, if I'm not mistaken, it's Simp and Abeezy or Abeezy and Celium, they have now the most wins, like tournament wins and trophies. You know, just basically anything that revolves a championship. Now with the pros, like the old timer pros, like Scump, Crimsix, Clayster, they're tied with them, but not the world championship. So let's just clarify that right there. Has the most wins of championships, but when it comes to the world championship, still right now tied or just one ring below all of them. So it is exciting to see Atlanta FaZe's success come to life at the Major 1 tournament. So let's talk about how they got there. So we will, of course, start from Friday and work our way, Thursday to Sunday. So the Atlanta FaZe had a 3-0, like I predicted, against the Boston Breach. Red Card was a 250-point win on Hardpoint, a 6-4 win on Red Card Search and Destroy, and a 3-0 on Protocol. So definitely some good series right there. Atlanta FaZe definitely with the overall series right here. Abeezy wins this one right here in the team category for 58 kills and 41 deaths for the entire series. And for your match MVP does belong to Abeezy with a 1.05 hardpoint KD, a 1.57 search and destroy KD, and a 1.92 control KD. Moving on into Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, the Atlanta FaZe were looking very dominant and strong, and they sure enough did showcase that talent by 3-0ing the Toronto Ultra, going 237 points in Vault Hardpoint, and definitely the highlight of that right there was literally just 0.01 seconds left on the clock. Abeezy steps off the hard point, time runs out, and FaZe wins by just 1 point to secure that first win in the tournament. And everybody had their minds blown. So did I, because I was like, what is going on here? You know, time's fixing to run out. The score is not even at 250 yet. And boom, here's Atlanta FaZe winning. So I had to go back and rewatch it. And sure enough, yeah, Abeezy steps off the point after securing that 1 point over Toronto right there. And the steps off, boom, FaZe wins when time does expire. So obviously, it looks like teams are catching up a little bit on FaZe, but still, FaZe is dominant enough in the Slayer category to really break those holds and start getting into capturing points. Second map is Protocol, Search and Destroy. FaZe wins that one 6-3. And for Control, Hacienda, it goes to FaZe in a 3-1 over Toronto Ultra. For your match MVP for this series right here was Celium with a 1 KD in Hardpoint, 1.33 S&D KD, and a 1.44 Control KD. Now moving on over into Sunday, the Atlanta FaZe goes up against the Los Angeles Thieves, who, by the way, was up 2-0 over Atlanta FaZe, had a dominant hardpoint over the Atlanta FaZe, a 250 to 107 hardpoint score on Red Card. And that was FaZe's pick for hardpoint. And then moving on over to Search and Destroy, Red Card Los Angeles Thieves dominate that one with a 6-4 win over Atlanta FaZe. And so FaZe are looking, okay, look, we got to bounce back right here. This is our stage. We just usually choke right here, but not this time around. And sure enough, FaZe turns things around, going into Hacienda Control, winning 3-2. Then going into Hacienda Hardpoint, 250 to 238. And then Search and Destroy goes to a round 11, winning 6-5. So for your match MVP right there, obviously goes to Simp with a 1.02 Hardpoint KD, 1.06 Search and Destroy KD, and a 1.04 Control KD. And then finally, on Championship Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, Atlanta FaZe yet again meets the Los Angeles Thieves. And this time, it sure enough goes the distance. In a 4-3 victory for the Atlanta FaZe to win the Major 1 tournament. To start off with, you got Hacienda Hardpoint with a 250 to 237 victory for the Los Angeles Thieves. Search and Destroy red card goes in favor of FaZe 6-4. Control Hacienda 3-2 in favor of FaZe. Hardpoint red card goes in favor of Thieves 250 to 229. Search and Destroy Vault a dominant 6-1. This is where pretty much FaZe starts to steal their victory. So it seems like. But then you go into Control. Los Angeles Thieves get a 3-1 victory over them. We're tied 3-3. Search and Destroy Skyline. For this right here, this will go down as one of the most dominant, most hyped matches of all time in the CDL records. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Los Angeles was up 4-3 at that time. And then FaZe bounced back, make it tied 4-4. And then during that 4-4, in the waiting room on Skyline, right before you get to the bridge area, Draza drops pretty much a dime, eliminating 2 players right there in that bridge waiting room area. That seals a victory right there, making them up to 5-4. Then, of course, Thieves bounce back, going into bottom vent, eliminating FaZe right there. So it's 5-5. We go to a round 11. Thieves, they planted the bomb. And then FaZe comes in, swoops it up, and there was still like 2 players available. Nowhere near the bomb. FaZe defuses and wins the Major 1 tournament. Guys, it was so astonishing. And then going into like Twitter or X, as you want to call it, Nadeshot definitely was not happy about that round 11. Of course, I'm pretty sure he's going to tell the boys, look, you got to stay on that bomb. Because if you do not, FaZe is going to defuse regardless. So he wasn't happy about that, but still at the end of the day, he was proud of his boys for making it that far. And I'm pretty sure the Los Angeles Thieves is going to win a major this season. And it's probably going to be against the Atlanta FaZe, because these 2 teams are really about the only teams that are going to be competing. I mean, outside of maybe a Royal Ravens and a Miami Heretics right in there, and occasionally one of the bottom tier teams like a Minnesota Rocker or Vancouver Surge pops up. We're not even talking about Optic right now, because Optic, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Just when it comes to the playoffs or tournament play-ins, whatever, you choke. You choke big time. You're just a bunch of onliners. And I'm going to take the heat on that. And I will stand proudly on that. So, guys, Atlanta FaZe is dominant once again. And this is looking like a promising season ahead for the FaZe squad altogether. So, my question to you is, after this Major 1 victory, considering that, yes, we still got major updates for the in-game system and everything like that, do you think after this Major 1 tournament that FaZe is a huge favorite to win COD Champs this year? and solidify themselves as the greatest Call of Duty team of all time, being the only CDL team to have 2 COD World Champs. So let me know in the comment section on Spotify or find me on Twitter. Just type in MorganMan Sports and you will find me there. But guys, I sure hope you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure to like button wherever you are listening from. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your preferred podcast. And I, Morgan, will catch you all later. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.